Good morning. So I said yesterday I'd do the majors after having done Bitcoin and Ether, and I didn't get around to it. And I went out last night and very, very tired today, so excuse the dark circles. Um, but yeah, I don't want to do the majors today because they are kind of more complicated because they have so much more history. They need a lot more thinking through. Um, so. I thought I'd do the alts today, all the alerts I've had in the last week or so. There's quite a few, but I mean they should be quicker than the majors because they've not got the history there. And then I can just also generally make some comments about, so whether things are breaking supply now. Like obviously we've had a lot of alt pumps over the last 48 hours. And I know at least three or four of them have gone through immediate zones, but they're ones I was unsurprised about. So I can talk about the structures and what to look for and things like that. Just a quick update on the not so much Bitcoin, but I mean you can see Bitcoin here that obviously we've hit this monthly zone that I talked about yesterday. It hasn't quite got to the zone inside that I wanted, taking out that previous high. So you can watch for that to happen today, and or watch for an 8 hour supply to be confirmed in the next 3 hours. Maybe there's a 4 hour in there if you want to be a bit more aggressive to see if you get a short. Could be a little bit too early. And also the other option is it could drop down to close the CME gap before coming up and potentially taking out that high for the second pass. And it's very early days, it may not reject here. Like bear in mind, obviously this is a zone of interest for shorts, but I haven't looked particularly at where the demand is. It looks like there's some down here, like I say, by the CME gap. So um, it might just bounce there and then continue this upward move. I did see, I'll have a quick look at ETF data because I did see there was quite a lot of ETF buying, or what appeared to be buying yesterday. Let's reload this page. Yeah, so we've got an update actually. So yesterday when I looked for the 22nd data, it was 700. So now that's up to 900 million. And then yesterday another 900 million, which may or may not be complete as of today. But yeah, so very, very big amounts of buying going in on the ETFs, which is good. And I haven't looked at the rest of the data, but as I said yesterday, the data was a little bit odd. It didn't, spot CVDs didn't really seem to be supporting this move up. But it's good that it was good for the bulls. It's got ETF buying, so maybe that's going to be enough to take it through supply. I'm not sure. I feel like they're a bit late to the party. Um, but I don't know. I guess if the price is going to go to 200k, then maybe they're not. Um, on the indices, again, we had a decent move up yesterday. Hopefully this will load. I haven't actually looked at this today. Yeah, so it did have a decent day. I think most of them had like 12-hour 1 day supply, and yesterday's move did actually push through those. Um, but yeah, essentially we're still in range from the week before. So again, I'm not sure why we've suddenly got this interest for ETFs when the rest of the market isn't really supporting that. Like I said, I've been a little bit out of the loop over the last few days because I'm on holiday. But yeah, anyway, like it's good for the bulls that the ETFs are buying. Whether they continue to buy and continue to push it up is hard to say. Hopefully, they're not all going to start selling today and then drop the price and BART it straight back down again. I don't know whether we're going to be likely to have BART how we used to with the ETFs being involved, unless there's some panic sell off. But it was really low volume that was giving us the BART patterns that we were seeing, a few years ago, and even sometimes more recently. But when we have low volumes, and now if volumes have gone back up with the ETFs, then maybe we're not going to get such dramatic BARTs. On US dollar dominance, same as yesterday, we've come back down to test this 8 hour demand that had been missed down here. So this is obviously, as I said, was a decent place for it to bounce. Just to reiterate, if you didn't watch yesterday's video, there are some similarities in PA back from August 2024 across Bitcoin, Ether, and obviously US dollar dominance as well. So this is kind of what I was concerned about for the bulls, because if this pattern here repeats here. I mean, this obviously didn't make a higher high previously, but that could get a move up either to the 4 hour, which was the lowest circle, or to the upper daily supply that was missed up there. Take those drawings off again. Um, so yeah, obviously we expect bounce and retracement, and it's hard to know. It may not come down that much, but it's possible the alts come down significantly if this happens. It would be a decent sized move for US dollar dominance. So just be a bit conscious of that. And then given I'm moving on to alts, let's just have a quick look at what others is doing. So others, and again, I did chart this and look at this yesterday. It's more challenging, it is in this. It's in the 2 month demand. It's in like I think a 1 month inside it, and the 2 week inside that. And obviously, we've been hoping for some sort of a bounce. And I've seen some people project this like this is just a retracement and could just go up, and they're right. It's possible. Um, the concern I had on this was again the similarities to the pattern back here. That we have sort of a triangle correction and then a distribution and a drop. And here are we going to do the same? I mean, it is a bit different looking here. Um, but again, like I'm back to thinking, is this going to be just a head and shoulders and a further drop? Because I would like lower levels on this, and we've got the larger double top. So these are the things that kind of make me a little bit more concerned on this. However, for a while we have been expecting a bounce. We've got that bounce on alts, with some alts being more aggressive. However, still under trend just about, and still under weekly supply. So we're still essentially in a weekly downtrend, even though the momentum has slowed. Um, and when we do get the bounce again, it's challenging because are we just going to get, so for example over here, we had the last low, and then we consolidated for a few months before moving up. But there are other instances where it just will go straight back up. So it's hard to know, are we going to get a rejection here, come back test? A lot of the alts have 4 day demand in here, and I've started alerting some of those. I want to see where the monthly and the 2 monthly closes are. Also remain very mixed, but we could get some sort of, consolidation through there before the up move. Um, and just run around in this range for a little while, similar to how we did here. Um, Yeah, so on the alts, they're very mixed. Like some have made, like I commented, for example, on SUI, Ondo, and ENA, which were requested of me a couple of weeks ago. That SUI and Ondo I quite liked. They were on, I think, monthly or weekly demands or whatever. But ENA has made a new 3 month supply. I think it's a bit of a dubious one because it's not got the history, but it's still something I don't want to trade into. And I'm still very much seeing alts, you're more than able to trade them both ways. So, maybe be a little bit careful in days like yesterday when, the whole market's clearly being very green. You don't want to be like FOMOing into shorts left, right, and center. But for the most part, the market's up and down, and the alerts I think that I'm hitting seem to most to be okay. And I might, change that that view as I go through them because I haven't looked at some of the older ones. And it's also I need to because I've been splitting them into groups this time. I don't know how well the ones that put the low hitting at the start of April. Whether I know they were getting reactions initially, but I don't know if they've had stronger, bigger moves based on hitting major supplies or major demands, or whether they're just ranging around similar to this kind of PA. So yeah, that's others. Like, yeah, ideally I wanted lower, but it is in this large demand. So, it could do a sort of decent retracement at any time and take out these trend line stops. And some of the alts we are seeing having done that. Um, and I'll go through those in a minute. Total DeFi, was looking a little worse, but also, yeah, like in this, ideally, I wanted lower in one of these zones, and again, still down that weekly downtrend. I was going to say total DeFi dominance was one I looked at yesterday. That was kind of like, okay, maybe that's interesting. Um, so this has come back into a 2 week demand down here. So maybe we're going to get some dominance back in. But again, it's very early days. We haven't really, yes, we're started to make a bit of a local daily uptrend, and that's what we're seeing on a lot of alts. We've got these daily uptrends, some now new 4 day demands, possibly some new 2 week demands if we make it to the end of the week without collapsing. But in many cases, still under supply. So we can make whatever demand we like in here. So similar to back here, for example. Ignore that wick's not the best example, but we had a weekly supply here. We dropped. This was making certainly daily demands and maybe 2 days, 3 days through here, but as soon as it gets to weekly supply, it drops back through all of those. So on the alts now that have, like here, we could see there's a daily and there's many that have 4 day demand here. They might get another push up into the zone above, but then they could still just collapse straight down from there. So just be a bit careful and don't be too FOMO-ish. And then yesterday, others dominance was the other one I was looking at again. And, it's clinging onto this support. And let's just zoom out so you can see, it's had a hit there. It's had a hit more recently, and now it's taken out that low. So again, yes, it possibly could go up from here. Could get a run and then take out the stops on dominance up into this 2 month supply in here. So that would be kind of what I was looking for. I would look for here if we do get a run on alts to maybe start looking for shorts. But really, again, I want this back down here ideally. Or that's kind of where it looks like it's heading. It is clinging on, but it's under supply still. So again, still got a way to go on alt season. Okay, so yeah, just a minor technical issue there while I reloaded the chart. So you can see here like this my list. Now put a new section in section 4. Section 3 was what we went through last time. Some of the ones from previous sections are coming into this one because obviously as I redo them, I set new alerts for the other direction or for retests and things like that. So we do see some repeated charts in here, but then we can see how well things have performed from previously. So that's pretty good. And you can see here, we're getting some up-down like scenarios. When we're getting a short and then it's coming into a long, etc. So I'm trying to, again, like as always, trade both directions. And particularly, yeah, so as I've said also previously, that when the market, like again, you're trying to preempt the reverse. So in situations like as I just described on the others in total DeFi charts, something like this, like my bias is if we reject here its weekly supply, we'll probably go back through here. So that, the bias is obviously still down in the bigger picture. But, obviously at some point it can reverse as well. So then if we are, in this case, I think there's a 2 week demand, but it's not confirmed yet. But there's also a 4-day in there. So then I'll put in the long entry. So in case, if this is a reversal, if we don't get, so it's a question of just gauging where the market's at when these retest entries hit. And I think, I've already done that once in this previous, not on this case, but on other charts in this previous section. We saw that on the majors, for example, and eventually they came back through. In some cases, they got a little bounce, but then they came back through for the lower low because we're still in that downtrend. Now we've got a bit more consolidation along the bottom. It's possible that things are going to start to hold and at least give, scalps if nothing else. So anyway, let's just start at the top. So AERGO, I think I talked about in one of the earlier videos for sure, like I had a possible 3 month supply alert here. I think it had already been tested. It already had this wick through it, but was worth watching. And then I said, oh, watch for the swing failure at the high, which I know one of the group got, so well done for that. And then similarly, we're looking at the retest entry. So this, I had an alert go for a more aggressive, I think 8 hour, 12-hour supply in here. So again, it's had a decent reaction off there. Might get a bounce here on this 4 hours. So it's possible now we get a bounce here, somewhere around here and go up to test up here. So again, I've set the alert. I haven't set a retest alert in here. I wouldn't do that unless we made a lower low here. And then again, there's a possibility of a bounce on there's a new 2 week or 3 week demand down here. But it's hard to know. Like I need to look at, I think it was auction was one of the other ones that did this. Not many have done these crazy big moves. So obviously, these have come off monthly demand and 3 week inside monthly at the lows, but to know it's going to do that so I can go, oh, congratulations to me. But some of these have done great bounces off these major demands at the bottom and others haven't. And getting the timing right for these massive longs, while it looks like would have been a great trade, would you have known to hold it all the way up here? No, probably not. And yeah, would you know to also take this trade? Virtually all of them have hit sort of 3 month and some have broken. So, or 3 month monthly, 2 month in case this case is 2 month zone. But yeah, anyway, so this is one of the structures that looks a little bit different. But I've watched this if it comes back into this weekly demand and possible short if it does make another run upwards. I think some of the AI coins have done a bit of a run. But again, we just need to come back for the retest. So this is something that's come up into weekly supply. It's got a new 4-day demand down here. So I think that's worth an alert down here. If my computer's going to play ball. 4-day demand. Create. Hopefully that's actually worked. I'll have to go through check that later. Anyway, so if it runs through this weekly supply, so the problem we've got on a lot of these now. Oh, and I'm running out of alerts. So back to this quickly. But up in 4 day weekly supply here, for new 4 day down there is worth watching for a possible long entry if this is going to be a reversal. The difficulty is when we get up to these higher levels now, and like I said, we'll see on a few of the others, is that we've got, there is a 2 weekly supply in there. It's clean on the 2 weekly, i.e. it hasn't been tested. The same with the weekly. So it might get a rejection in here, but then there's a 5 day a bit underneath. So there's a 5 day in there, which is the next alert that I have. Obviously, there's more untested zones up here, and it's a question now, if are we going to get the strength, which is going to run straight back through these. And I guess from my perspective, if we do, we do. Like I can put the alert. What I hope for when I have that alert, is that even if the market is getting strong, is that we're going to get a test here to give another long entry, up a test somewhere in here to get another long entry, etc. But in some cases, you will just get the run straight through everything. So we'll just have to see what happens. But yeah, that's AIXBT. ALU. This was another one of interest. It's got back down on monthly demand. It's a pretty slow decline. It's something that could potentially run through everything if it wants to. But again, difficult because it's got a weekly supply immediately above. So it's had the bounce, it's hit the weekly supply. And yeah, I just need to see with this if it's going to give any more. As you can see, it's again very choppy on the what's the word? On the supply side. So there are a couple of weekly supplies in there, but there's a few 5 days, and I'll go to the 4 day, and there'll be quite a few more of those. And so it becomes hard. So, it is possible we're going to run through all of these, and particularly coming off a monthly demand. So something like this, I won't set an alert. I mean, I won't set an alert on this because it's too far away, but I wouldn't be looking for shorts, particularly in this area, because it's one of the ones on the more bullish side. And there's a retest of monthly demand. Unless it breaks this, it's possible it goes down to there. That would be, the next obvious zone to look for longs if it does reject off this weekly and doesn't hold in this general area. And then yeah, potentially look for shorts if it comes all the way up there. But I wouldn't. It would be a bit, firstly, too aggressive to look for shorts based on coming off a monthly demand, and secondly, likely if it is going to go up, it's going to take out all these trend line stops. So that's something I've said to keep an eye on. It doesn't have a 4 day demand. It does have a daily in there, so I think that's worth an alert. So let's see what happens when we get that test on that daily there. It's pretty high risk because it is still in this local downtrend. It still hasn't broken. In order for it to be, what happened there? In order for it to be, a high probability long entry for a retest, like you really want it to be breaking supply. That would be, or at least a lot higher in supply than this. Whereas this hasn't even come up to the daily in there. So it's not a high probability. It's what I would consider a weak zone at the moment. Like it's a strong move away from it, but it hasn't broken supply. So it's medium to weak in the way I consider these. However, it's coming off this monthly demand. So it's possible at this point that we don't go down, take out the low again, and then run. So, just be a bit careful on that, but we'll see what happens. AMI, another one, so one with very, very little history. Got a long entry in here, and it's now just come up to a 2 day supply for a short entry. It's got a daily demand right in here, so this it would be a very early short if anybody had taken that, and you would need to be conscious of this daily because if it wants to run up, it could just still run up from here. Else, if it does drop, it's got a little 12-hour in there that could pick up, so it's possible it comes down into here, but again, you just need to see a little bit more of what this is going to do on the lower time frames. But a reasonable start to it anyway, and the market's in the right place if Bitcoin is going to correct for that to potentially come down. Apex, I think, didn't quite hit that alert. That was for 8 and 12 hour supply in there, and the larger weekly. And I did set an alert on this for 4 day demand. Again, it's one of the ones that it's got a lot of history on this. But it's holding the top here. So again, it's possible level of support. So I'm, okay with putting a lot possible long entry in there, but not fully convinced on that. I do have another entry or alert on the 3 month down here, but on this, like really, I'd actually want an entry down there. But that doesn't mean it's not going to get a bounce in the interim. It's got 2 month supply up there. It's got a whole load of stops that it could go for here. In a perfect world, it's going to come down, give a nice re-entry on the 4-day demand before a move up. So that's something to keep an eye on. Avail. Um, yeah, this is sort of similar to Apex, like, but potentially more risky. We don't have the history, but it's like, is this a reversal? Like at some point we would like to see a run through, and it's worth watching because we might get a run through of all this low time frame. So there's dailies and below in there, all the blue lines are dailies or 2-day demand supplies. So this could just run through everything. That has a 4-day offset, so I've got an alert. Did I actually set an alert on that? Doesn't appear to have an alert, so obviously I was thinking about it, but I don't know if I actually set it, or sometimes because of this internet issue they sort of disappear. So I'm going to set another one there. 3-day demand. But again, just due to the lack of supply on this, like while I don't like the fact it's got no demand to the left at the lows, at least it's got this new 3-day demand, and the lack of supply makes it worth trying for a long entry because it's got a big scope to go higher if it does work out. I have to check all these alerts afterwards because I don't know why they're not lighting up like they're set properly. Um, AVL, okay, so this was one I think I had an alert for like a 12-hour demand at the low or something like that. So again, it has got a bounce, but in the meantime, it's made 3-day supply immediately above. So this I'm probably more bearish on. I would need to see a bit more. Again, I thought I set an alert. No, maybe it was something else for like a break of these lows. I think maybe it was something else actually. Um, but again, yeah, this is not something I particularly look for longs on. I think it's more likely for this to fall. Yeah, it didn't make a weekly supply. So yes, it can still pick up here as a swing failure. It is trying to refine support on this orange line here. Um, but yeah, I think there are better things to long rather than this choppy supply like this, because even if it does work, it might take some time and then failure. If it gets back up here, I'd look for shorts potentially in there. Um, Baby was one I had a couple of sort of more aggressive long entries and very high risk due to having no history. So here was long entries looking at that 12-hour demand, and then I think there was an 8-hour inside it, which obviously didn't work. Then looking for shorts back up if it goes back up to that 8-hour supply. Haven't looked at this for a few days, so let me just see if there's a daily in there. There's a 12-hour demand in here, so if the market stays strong and you really want to, you can potentially look for longs in there, but this is not something I would. I mean, the history isn't enough, and we've broken this level. Plus, we have the larger, there's a weekly supply in here now, so this is MEXC has all the history on this, and in some cases, these you just see them fall off and go all the way back down to the bottom. So be a bit careful on that. If you are looking for longs, maybe it'll give you a scalp off here, or more than a scalp just to come back up to here, but it's a risky one due to the weekly supply. Bell was, yeah, one got absolutely crucified, and in fact has even come back through that 3-day. So yeah, I had an alert here. I actually thought this might be okay because this I think had 3-month demand or 6-month demand or something up there. Actually, I do have a line. Just check. A monthly, and I think it was one of the ones that was actually stronger later. So you can see I was quite biased to looking for longs on this. It was holding quite well, and then last week for some reason it got killed. Um, and I think, well, I say for some reason, but in the grand scheme of things, like when you look at the higher time frames on these, I mean, maybe it was just behind. Let me just hide everything so you can see. But um, it projected off a 3-month supply up here. In fact, it's got an annual supply, so it's got an annual supply that it was coming off. Then it had gone up into it again and rejected off the 3-month inside it. Now it might make a new 3-month supply. I can see I've got another alert in there. I'm not sure what that is. So that's a 4-day supply. Um, yeah, so now I've kind of looked for potentially to be biased back to short. So I don't know like what happened with this, if there was some news or delisting or something like that as to why it got sent off a cliff last week, more than many other things at that point in time. You can look for longs on this now if you want. It is a kind of a cagey support, but again, there's probably better things to look for longs on. Might give you a retracement though, bounce up to here if nothing else. But maybe just check Binance on this and check it hasn't delisted it or something crazy. Um, Bunker was kind of doing quite nicely actually, but has now, I think, been delisted by MEXC. Yeah, so there's no futures on this anymore. Um, I think I didn't have that alert set in there. Can't remember. Um, but yeah, it was kind of a nice sideways trade with a couple of shorts in there and a long in there. Didn't quite. I think this alert might have gone, but didn't quite hit it. I think this alert didn't go because I think at that point I just took it off the list and deleted that alert. Um, but yeah, anyway, it's irrelevant because that's no longer on futures and most people are trading futures. Broccoli F3B, whatever that is. Um, Another one with not enough history, so it's kind of hard to say. So obviously it had a strong move last week. Then it came back for a retest on this 2 day. I think it bounced just above it and has now made a daily supply. So I think I'd be inclined to actually look for shorts on this now if it retests that daily. So again, just be conscious of what the markets are doing when these are hitting because supply not demand. Some of these things, like if you look at pump, for example, which we'll get to in a bit, have just gone straight up from here. There is still this 2 day and 4 day demand in there. So, this is possible. It comes down, gets another test of that level and then runs from there. So, you can see there is, the only thing I didn't like about this zone on why I wouldn't trade it again now, like it had a bounce very close to it. So if you get that as initial scalp, which is what I would recommend it, then great. Um, but it's now got these little trend line stops in here. So if it does come back again, which obviously it's looking like it wants to, I would expect it to go deeper. So maybe you'll get an entry on this 4 hour down here, perhaps. Or potentially it could drop into the weekly. And similarly here, it's got the same issue that we've got the trend line stops there. So I just, I don't know if this is going to want to run through things similar to here, and this was the same as what I said here on this entry. There were trend line stops that I thought it could take out, and it did. Yeah, so obviously that was a short entry, and I think I looked for initially. I said as a swing fail here into the 12 hour because my alert there maybe had just been slightly missed. And then I think there was a weekly supply here, which obviously got a reaction, but then consolidated. So yeah, I've just watch what the reaction is if it comes for a retest on this. The only thing with that is I just don't love this wick all the way up to the top there. So let me just have a quick look at the lower time frames on this. Because what you can find is if there is an untested, which quite often there is an untested like hourly or something. So there is an hourly in here, it was tested but hasn't had a rounded retest. But maybe there's something slightly below that. Yeah, so this, even this has been tested. But you can see anyway, just in this drop here, we've had a bit of a drop off there. And it did get a test on the immediate candle, but there's a bit of a gap here. So this might be filled by that's coming up midway on that gap. But it's possible it will want to go back up into this zone. So, you can keep an eye on this daily for a short. But yeah, just be conscious that, what you might get is possible you'll get the reaction. Hmm. There's also an hourly. Yeah, so there's a few zones in there that aren't quite tested. So yeah, I've set the alert obviously for this daily zone right here. This is a big zone, but so yeah, be conscious that it could take out this high and go into this hourly that wasn't quite tested, but also that when you've got these gaps that haven't been properly tested previously, that it might come up higher. But what you could get is a reaction here, then it comes back. That was a bit extreme, but then it comes back. It's created new demand, and then you get a run up to there before a drop, assuming it's going to drop at all. So just be conscious of that. Buzz, I feel like Buzz was delisted. Maybe it was just Bybit. It's still on MEXC and various others of the smaller exchanges. So really nasty drop there. Maybe that was a Bybit announcement of a delisting. I'm not sure. I haven't looked at this chart since. Um, so I guess this is one that's already had a retest. So it's got a 3 week and 2 week supply in there. I think yeah, I'd while it's under this 3 week, I just don't want to be looking for longs on this particularly. If, in 17 days, or if the 2 week, if it gets a close above here in the next 3 days above like 87, then you can use the 2 week as a flip demand. But until that's happened, I don't really want to be looking for any longs on this. There's a monthly supply up here, 5 day inside it if it gets higher. So obviously it's still trying here. It might make a 3 day, but yeah, I'd rather see um, this 2 week or 3 week supply flip to demand before looking for longs again on this. So this is as an example of what I've said earlier. The ones that have got rejection off this weekly, in this case, weekly supply here, it's come back, it's testing this daily demand in there, and now it's going back up again for a second try. So as I said earlier, this is what you're looking for. This may or may not be the bottom. But what you're looking for is that test and then the higher low. And then really you want the higher high to come through and take out supply now if this demand is strong from these levels. And in a perfect world, you would have, demand over to the left there. In this case, obviously there's no history, so we don't have that. We do have a swing fail of the low, so we have a retest following the deviation or swing fail of that low. So yeah, just need to see on this, but not something I want to long. I mean, if you want to look for longs, if it comes back around to sort of the 6,000s, then that's up to you. Let's light a cigarette quickly. CAPTAINBNB, well, that's run again finally. Unfortunately, didn't come back again for retest entries. So this is in. So I guess it's not dissimilar to Buzz actually. This is in a large 2 week supply. So this is exactly what I was just saying on Buzz, that I would like to see this 2 week, this close up here. It's not going to be a strong 2 week unless it goes above this entire candle, but I would like to see that flip to demand, and then I'd be more confident of looking for longs there. In this case, I can see from my alert there's a 2 day demand there as well. So again, very little history, hard to know. Some of these coins, like particularly the ones that are just on MEXC, so be careful of that. Particularly ones that are just on MEXC could just die forever. More inclined to do that. I think if they're on Binance, Bybit, etc., and everything else, then they're more likely to do something or to continue. But a lot of the MEXC ones, they just have one pump and then die forever. So this obviously, I got the sort of initial short here off the 2 week supply into a long here on 3 day demand, and it's had a really good move off there. And then I reset an alert for 2 day demand should it revisit back down there. But obviously it's been pushing. And again, so while I set, so there's another comment, while I set all my alerts like more conservatively, because A, I don't have enough alerts, and B, I just want to be more confident of them. There is no reason this is not going to bounce here or on this 12-hour below, or if I go to the 8-hour, maybe there's something else in there. Like I make some judgment, like sometimes I put more aggressive ones in. This to me is still in 2 week supply, and in 3 week, there's a 3 week just above that this wick has come off. It's still on a lower high, so I don't want to be too aggressive on longs. But it's up to you. If you want to be more aggressive and make sure you get in the trades, if you think, this market's going to go full on bull, then by all means get in. I haven't any indicators on here, but you can use the EMAs and use bounces off the EMAs that are confluent with these zones. I think I have no shorts on that above. CATI is another one, again, just hit local supply here. There's a daily demand in there. I don't love the structure of that, so I haven't added to it. I do have a short entry, like again, it's got 2 week weekly, two weekly supplies stacked on here. I haven't alerted them because of the triangle. So, if this does run, a lot of the charts that have look like this, not so much with a triangle like this, but with the trend line stops through here and then an untested 2 day supply above. And in many cases, 2 months and monthlies and others higher. But I've alerted quite a few of these 2 days above in case we just get a trend line stop run, because it is a clean 2 day with a decent drop away from it. In case we just get a trend line stop run and then drop back from there. And then, as you can see on this, it becomes challenging. Beyond that, that's the most immediate one. But then there's another, couple of 2 days there, 4 or 5 day here, and then 2 month and weekly, etc., and a whole bunch of zones. So it's just going to be very hard to judge now if these are just going to run all the way back up through, and that's where we're going to really need to use the confluence for the total and the others charts and things like that. Might need to speed this up a bit because I'm only on the C's and we've still got quite a long way to go. Cats, this is looking a bit more nice, like a nice consolidation through here. Um, that was obviously long entry on daily demand here. Going on to the daily, has held there. Now back up, again, but it's challenging because still it's under 3 week supply. And, when it's first, second, third, fourth hit, you would think, oh, yes, it's probably going to break. Um, but it doesn't have to. And, it could still just be taking time to play out the downtrend. So yeah, I think after this alert hit, I would have set the one for the next daily down in case it dropped through that zone. If it makes a lower high here, it's possible it does. So you can look for a possible re-entry, even on a retest of the zone that I previously had, or if it comes down a bit lower. And then I've got an alert up here with that similar will it, won't it stop kind of structure up here on 2 week supply, and then there's a monthly above. CATTON. Another similar one, you can see the downtrend's kind of trying to taper off, but still under weekly supply. So I had the alert for there. So it's gone a little bit up inside it, but I would just want to see a bit more on this. I think, it's obviously got daily demand that was tested below there. It's got a new daily in here, but being under supply, I think, again, there's better things to long. If it gets up here, then we'd be looking for shorts. Why are there so many catty cats, CATTON and cat? Too many of them. Here's another one that's under weekly supply. Again, everyone's calling for a market reversal at this point, and as I keep saying, yes, we're on a point, and others where we could have a market reversal, but we've thought that here, we thought that here, and we're thinking that here. Until we get through supply, there is no market reversal, and I still think alts are probably going to do their own thing either way. So this has got a 3 day. Not confirmed, so this might confirm as a 3 day demand at the end of the day and there. At the moment, it's a 2 day, so I'll just draw it in as a 3 day in case I don't have a chance to update it. For some reason, I'm feeling more reluctant. I don't like that entry there particularly now. So there's a weekly in there, but again, you can see when you go down the lower time frames, the chop that could run through. So again, it's got that 2 day up here that could be more viable, and then a monthly above. So this is probably one I wouldn't really, maybe that 2 day because it's confluent with the breakdown levels over to the left. But um, again, this is just going to be a question of if it's going to make a higher low. At this point, it's still guessing. At this point, it's in a weekly downtrend. So I won't put an alert on that for now, but see if the short plays out. CRV has come back into a 5 day supply, and I think I had an alert here, which played out. I guess that probably would have been a weekly down there, no? So there was a 5 day supply in there. I think it might have taken a wick through it before getting a bigger drop. It does now have a new weekly demand. So, but I think I was looking at this the other day and I was finding, like all the ones with history, it's just a bit more challenging. It's coming off an annual supply up here. I think the 6 month is what's throwing me on this, and I think I was a bit reluctant. So it had a 6 month supply when it closed this candle from 2024 below. It's come all the way up to the top and swing failed that, and then potentially it's closed above, so it's maybe flipped it to demand. So I think I've deleted both levels, but it's really still a range. Like it's neither, it's now, it hasn't quite done enough to break supply, but it has flipped it to a demand, but not a very strong demand. So I think I was just a bit like, and then with the overarching annual supply, again, a weak annual supply, and it can go higher inside it, it makes me struggle with it a bit. So my preference on this would still be for it to come down to test in here. Yeah, so I think that's why I was still potentially looking for shorts because I still feel, and with this annual and the 3 month level in there, I still feel that it's worth potentially looking for a bigger drop on this, but we shall see. Again, there's probably better things that you can be looking for shorts and longs on than this because it's messy. But for now, it's in a 5 day supply. It's got a 3 day inside that. If it pushes a bit higher in there, that would be around the 61 fib of this retracement. So again, structurally, it's one of those things. Is this a reversal where we've now had this, strong impulse move? It's a retracement, and now we're going into another impulse, potentially to get up to here. Or are we having an A, and this is a corrective B wave, then we're going to have a C wave before the next impulse? That's the bit I find that's sort of slightly more challenging on these, but we're just looking for what reaction we get in here to see if we are going to get the short entries. DBR, sad state of affairs, this one. Somebody I think put on my previous YouTube video that with DBR to the moon or something like that. But then I'm confused because we have DBR and DRB, and I would think I was for a while I was thinking they were the same thing, but clearly they're not. Mm. Either way, this has gone very head and shoulders. I tried to look for long entries, to maybe get another wave if we're a very new coin if it was going to hold this as support. Um, but obviously, ultimately, got a couple of ounces in here, then the short side, then the long side for the retest. The long side no, then failed. So now I've flipped that to a short entry for supply. And at the moment, it's a weekly supply. There's a 3 week a little bit higher. But the whole thing could well turn out to be a monthly. And so again, we've got 6 days till the end of the month, but I've started kind of putting alerts in saying, okay, that's a possible monthly supply. And again, this is a solid trade for a possible short because, even if it retraces, excuse me, like down somewhere in here, that's potentially would be a very good short entry on that. You can see also there's it's still even struggling here. So if you want to like do a more aggressive short through here, it's got quite a neat stop that you could have like 1640 for a potential drop down there. But this is a more conservative short entry should it go back up. Yeah, deep is one of the ones that went through local supply. And again, as I've said with these trend lines, it was hard. So I'll show you the 2 weeks so you can see what I mentioned on previous. So it's a clean 2 week supply here, which is why I had the alert set because I thought it was I knew it was coming off 3 week demand, and this is one of the more bullish charts. And so the fact I've got a 2 week supply and an untested, potentially, I think it was untested 5 day above, makes me very unsurprised that this is run through, or 4 day, in fact, above. So again, just be careful of that when you've got an untested zone here and a zone below that you're looking at. The chance of it going up through into the higher zone are pretty high. So it doesn't surprise me it's done that. We had all these trend line stops through here. It's coming down quite nicely now off that second entry, so that's decent. I think this is probably worth a re-entry back on here. Or a re-entry alert, should I say. 2 day. So there's kind of two options on this let me just think about the overall structure for a minute. So it's similar to what I just said on CRV, it's like this is quite a strong move, so that's good. Hopefully it's not just a stop hunt, but are we going to get a move down for another move up? Or is, this now just it's over with the head and shoulders that I've talked about? Very bad picture of one that's not a very good head and shoulders at all, but so there's a little 2 day demand in there, confluent with the 3 week level. So I think that's worth watching. There's a daily in there, and there's another daily down, 2 day and daily down here. So possible retests on this, then I would look for a daily down here, more conservatively, or this 2 day confluent with the 3 week level in there. So I'm going to set an alert for that. 2 day demand. See what happens when we get back into that area. And my shoulders are stiff. I did a Muay Thai class a couple of days ago, and I'm going to do another one this afternoon. And yeah, it really, really wrecks your shoulders. DOGINME was one I quite liked. So, but again, I was trying to be bullish on this because we got its monthly demand. It didn't get the bounce off the top of it and the 2 week off the top. Came down a bit deeper inside to this daily, which it did hold. Then it held a retest here, but it's kind of weak. But then on the short side, you can see I'm trading in both directions. There was, there were a couple of other charts with some history on it. So you can see I've got all-time high for CoinEx at the upper orange line, and then all-time high for the W East base chart. So there's a swing failure off that. At that point in time, I was looking for a trend line break. So we got the trend line break here. Then we got an entry on the retest of after the trend line break. Then another little trend line break. I don't think I looked at it in that time. Another retest of this 12-hour supply up here before the bigger drop. And then similarly coming back into this daily supply here, I had another alert for a short daily and 3 day supply and back down into demand. So again, very nice just to trade both directions. Once you've had a few zones hit, then it becomes, so here you really wanted a strong move off that to show its intent to be bullish. and it hasn't really given that. So not loving this now, and I wouldn't really look for another long entry on this. It's now done that, and if it holds, great. But for me, it's not strong enough off this level. It might come down deeper, or might just be going to drop. I didn't put anything below either, just due to this big breakout. And then failing that, there's another 8 hour supply. If it does want to come up higher in this zone, then maybe it will get a short up there. DRB, a little like DBR, but maybe a little more, still holding a bit more strongly than DBR. Excuse me. Oh, okay, so this now, I haven't updated this chart, so now has a weekly supply. So I say it's stronger, but probably not anymore. So update this quickly. So we've got a weekly supply in there, no 2 week, 5 day, level a bit lower there. Let's put that into, because 5 days have been increasingly more reliable. I never used to chart 5 day or 4 day zones back in the day. It was 3 day and then weekly, but quite often the weekly just doesn't give you, or you're just too late by that point. Given this is a weekly supply in there, I mean, it's 2 day. It might make a 2 day demand here this afternoon, so you can watch for that. But again, I probably prefer, and even this is very risky. Like, some of these work and some don't, but obviously at this point it might just break down. But I think that's worth a possible short on this weekly in here. And then there's obviously the daily inside it. So set that alert for 1 week supply, 1 day inside. So yeah, look for a short if it comes back up into that area. It's still a bit of a tentative short because it hasn't broken this low. So this demand, and it did have a decent move off there, but seems to be slowing down, and the slowing down certainly on the green side. On the red side is still relatively strong. So maybe one more bounce up into here and then dropping down is a possibility on this. ELX is again very similar to AVL, I think, and AVAIL, maybe, like a couple of those earlier ones that I said. That's got no supply through here, so is worth looking for long entries. And I'm not sure what that black cross was there from previously. I'm not sure if that was a trend line break or what my alert actually was on that. But so I've obviously now set an alert here for daily demand. It had a short for daily supply, which it just took a wick through. So, and then it's holding this 2 day level here. But so again, if I would worth keeping an eye on this, like while the demand isn't overly clear, and I don't love this as a level that I would normally alert, so preferably down here, but it does have no supply. So if it does run from here, then the chances are it's going to run. It's still got a bit of 8 hours. It's still got a bit of local supply in here, but you can keep an eye on this to see if it gets more consolidation, because it could be a big move and may not get back down to my entry down there. I really can't remember what that was. I don't know, what that was. That was a trend line break, I think, from this, but I think it wouldn't have given, I've got a feeling it didn't give an entry. I think it was, or it didn't give a retest entry. No, I think it was just already up here by the time the trend line break happened. So if you'd FOMO'd in, fine, but obviously I would never do that. I would expect that it would look for some sort of a retest. So yeah, that was that from previously. Epic, another really messy chart here. So rejection of 2 day supply in there. Let me see if there's any 2 week or weekly. Yeah, if it gets too messy like this with the lower time frame zones, then I'd rather wait. So there is a 5 day that it's still holding in there. And 3 day below, just take that off so I can see what I'm doing. And a 4 day might make a new 3 day supply in here today. So just be a bit careful of this if you're looking for longs for any particular reason on this particular coin. But yeah, this is just a bit nasty and messy for me. I think previously I was looking for that break on the 3 day. No, that was not this coin. Thinking of something else. Yeah, okay. So this is more short bias now. Obviously, it came off 2 day supply at the high. Oh, what did I just do? I ruined my, maybe I just closed the section. Thought I ruined my lists for a minute. Disaster. Um, yeah, I can see there's some stops below. It's just rejecting off a daily supply here. So yeah, my bias is still short on this. I gave a little bounce off that daily zone in here. Maybe it'll go up, but yeah, I don't like it if it's made this daily supply immediately above. That's not something I'd be looking for longs on. I'd rather it took out those stops first. Maybe another long back down in here, but we'll see. So FARTCOIN. Um, so I talked in my previous videos about this. It had a weekly supply and it's got this 3-day inside it at the 61 fib. So the alert went from there, and I've updated on that in previous videos. Obviously, it didn't come down very far, and it had a daily demand. It's picked that up. I reset the alert because it hadn't quite hit the zone. I mean, preferably if you're doing that, you're looking for a swing failure, but it's still a zone of interest when it hasn't quite hit the zone on the wick. This has made a new 4-hour demand. Obviously, it's one of the stronger coins, so I don't really want to be shorting this. But what you're looking for if you are wanting to short this is for it to come back through that 4 day, sorry, I think I said 4 hour, 4-day demand, retested, and then look for a drop lower. It's now also got a weekly demand lower that I've alerted for a possible long. I've said previously, though, that if this is just a retracement of that drop, then it could come deeper. It may not bounce off this weekly at the top here. And if you're aggressively wanting to long or scalping this, you can look at that 4-day demand that's like very, very close to price. So yeah, and given the now structure, this is not the best short, so I wouldn't necessarily take this as a short. And this was more also just to be, like I said even originally, that be wary of these short entries. This was more to be conscious of every people who are longing this, that they should potentially take profit on their longs at this point and or just be wary. So it's not necessarily something I would trade in either direction at this point. I would wait for a dip a bit deeper on this. Form is kind of looking interesting, and it's kind of the ones I find challenging though. It's grinding upwards, and we've got some coming up that have done this grind and then suddenly do a massive breakout. But when they leave these trend line stops below it makes it quite hard because you're then running a risk, particularly with these low volume coins, that you're going to get heavy slippage if it does decide to run and take out all those stops. So this went off for a short yesterday in 3-day supply. So if you're in that, great, and just you need to watch it and see what happens. It's very early days. We've got shorts at the tops and longs at all the bottoms, so that's pretty nice. But we just need to see if this has got the capacity to break out. I think at least it is one of the ones again that's listed on multiple exchanges. So Binance, Mexi, Bybit's in there. Yeah, so all the big exchanges. So again, could pick up for another run. But again, there's just nowhere I really want to long this because of those trend line stops. So if you see, like I would say, come back to this, like if Bitcoin does a bit of a dump, come back to this and see if this swing fails and takes out those stops and gives you an entry thereafter. That's is potentially a nice one to do a run on that. Fourth, is one of the ones that sort of did a massive wick through here. Again, overarchingly, it's a tough one. It's obviously in a downtrend, but then it's had a more than that 3-year sideways consolidation, which it's now just broken the bottom of. But obviously, it broke the bottom and the swing failed the bottom, and it's had this giant wick up, taking out all the stops up into monthly supply above there. Now it has a 3-month supply. I don't know if the wick, so that's already tested that 3-month supply with the giant wick up. But I just don't know. Like, is that a genuine buy situation on fourth? Now it's taken out the stops there. Is it going to just run up like you would see on a lot of things? Or is it really just a random stop pump based on a swing fail, like a pump and dump group, something like that, and now it's come back down, that's it forever on this. So yeah, I did have a short entry more aggressively here on the 2-day supply. It was an 8-hour inside it, or maybe I had it for the 8-hour and it didn't quite test it, I'm not sure, but possibly it was the 8-hour that didn't quite get tested. But yeah, I would just leave this alone. It doesn't look like something I really want to trade. GHIBLI, however you pronounce that. Now broken down that 3-day demand. So again, and the daily. Slightly more challenging one, again, just being a new coin. Like, I don't know if it's going to hold. Like, so the new coins can do one of two things. They can either like seriously pump, No, I don't want to remove it. I don't know what was in there. They can either seriously pump or they seriously dump. Um, and you've just got to take your clues from the lower time frames as to which one it's going to be, because the chances are they'll either, and when I say seriously, I mean more than like, well, in the case of shorting, obviously it's not going to go down more than 100%, but in many cases it will drop like 90% if it does go to the downside. So something like this, it could end up all the way down here. Um, but also if they want to pump, they can also equally go very far in the other direction, two, three, four times if they want to. So this is now made a 5-day supply in there, so I'm definitely not long biased on this at the present of time. Um, may make a 2-day supply on this. So it's made a 5-day and it's already tested it and come off it. May make a 2-day at the end of the day. So on this, I would just say, wait for the close. It's got a daily supply in there that's been tested as well. I would say wait for the close today and, maybe just wait for a bit more PA on this and see if this does start to look like if it's going to break down, because then it's got the scope to go significantly lower if it wants to. But this is not something I want to long, being under 5-day supply there. Um, GRIFFAIN, so another one that's come off a weekly supply. The short entry, I think, went on that yesterday. It's got a 4-day demand on that down there, which is potentially worth looking. I say below is on radium. Anything on this is ISO, because I've got below on radium written there. I've got a feeling maybe this isn't a decent support. Let me have a quick look at the radium chart. Um, I don't have too many things on my watch list, but it really struggles to put them in alphabetical order. You see what the radium chart looks like on this. Yeah, okay, so that was my problem with this. Like, while okay, it's gone through an immediate weekly, so the next C, I've got a bubble next C, so we've got the wet next C. Because of this structure, I don't want to look for longs on the 4-day demand on that. So that we were just looking at a minute ago, this new 4-day demand, I don't really want to look for longs there, because the chart with history has further deeper it can go. Rightly or wrongly, I don't know whether in some cases it's hard to know if you should follow what those what the older charts are doing, but in the absence of anything else and with very little history, then it's worth doing. Gun is an alert that's gone off again this morning, so this does have a 4-day demand in it, but I'd already set an alert for, I think, 2-day or daily on top. It was more aggressive. Where I acknowledged it was a 4-day, just drew the 4-day, so I probably didn't know it was there when I did it. The log. Yeah, so it's a little bit, again, my concern on this, as I've talked to you before, so 1 2-day demand, I said more aggressive at the top. Yeah, there's a 4-hour in here, there's another 4-hour here. So the things I didn't like about this, so it's got the alert for now, and it's got a 4-day now that I've noted inside. It's got the 4-hour untested. So let me just show the 4-hour chart. Um, so we've got obviously, firstly, trend line stops. Secondly, 3 lots of equal lows, an untested 4-hour down here and an untested 4-hour here. So that's why I've said this alert is aggressive, but again, doesn't mean it's not going to get a bounce, even if the bounce only comes up to here. Give me a pen. Not going to give me a pen. Hello, yeah, we go. Even if it gets a bounce only up to here, it comes down into here, bounce, and maybe goes all the way back down, or we can just run straight through. So, and it doesn't have to come back down to these levels, but that would be, I was kind of tossing up adding an alert in here, but I think it just starts to get with these equal bottoms here. It makes me, yeah, just a little bit more skeptical. I think a wick down to there is very possible. Um, Having said that, it isn't at a good level at the high. I didn't have a short in here. I had a trend line break entry there. And this is basically the retest of the broken trend line. And then up here we've got hourly and 4-hour supply if it comes back up there. But again, just something with very little history, and it's kind of hard to know what it's going to do from here unless the whole market becomes bullish. JAILSTOOL, yeah, this was obviously short bias, came off daily supply in there, expecting a drop down into here. I will need to rechart this to see if there's any new entries. Made weekly supply there by a hair. Oh, my shoulders are hurting. Let's go for another massage later today. Maybe it'll make 4 days. So at the moment, there's not really any entries that I really want to add to this, because it's already, so that was the aggressive re-entry for the short side. If it makes 2 day supply, daily supply, it has made a daily in there. If you want to look for an aggressive short on this daily supply here, that's something you can do. I might actually add that one. It's a bit of a large zone, so I don't necessarily love it, but again, it's got some scope to drop on this, assuming it doesn't just take out this low and then bounce. But I will set that alert just as a possible short re-entry there. Save. So you can keep an eye on that if that comes up for a retest. Kilo is another short, another one that, may or may not have found a bottom here. So again, I've had just trading happily both directions, 12-hour demand at the bottom, retest on daily demand in here, now up in weekly supply, so more loath to put in a new long entry. So again, one of the ones I now want to see if it's going to start creeping through this supply, and or if it's just going to break back down and start breaking demand from here. That would be the next level of interest up there if we get there. Yeah, just needs to see a little bit more on that. KOMA, another will it, won't it? So this has come off monthly supply and has now had a test on a weekly. It's obviously just run through the zones and see if it's got that 4 day in there as well. So again, you can just see the structures are much the same on all of these. So just don't blindly enter every single one of them. But if you think the market's going to reverse, and like I say, I'm not confident that it is going to reverse based on the others chart, others dominance, and the DeFi charts. So at this stage, I remain not confident until I start seeing those charts break these supplies. I think we might see some alts run, but my preference for the ones on the longs are the ones which have got something to the left here. This isn't horrendous though. It's a nice clean 4 day there, so maybe it's a long entry I could put in. There's a 3 day offset a little bit above. Yeah, I mean, it's worth a try down here, I think. But with this, just be conscious. Oh no, does it come off 3 month supply? Hold on, let me just check. No, okay, so it's made a 3 month supply, but it hasn't actually tested it yet. So the only thing on this, I would just say that would be my next short entry. Would be here, not much higher. So again, just be conscious if it comes back down into here, that's fine. But if it goes there first, then I wouldn't want to take a long, I don't think. I'm time consuming having to. I was really annoyed. The Easter sale on TradingView, I was considering upgrading my plan to the expert one so I get more alerts. But for some reason, they only had, and obviously I'm just bitter, so they only had a 60% discount on the expert plan, but all the other plans had 80% discount. So it was intensely irritating. So I'm like, well, hold on, that's really unfair. Why is it the one I want only has a 60% discount? So I then got bitter and decided to wait potentially until Black Friday in November. So now I have to suck it up only with my only 800 alerts between now and then. Anyway, KOMA. So yeah, just adding these two entries on KOMA for 4 day demand, and then that 1 month, 3 month supply up here. So again, the challenge on this, it is a large 1 month, 3 month zone. It could go higher inside. It could go all the way up to this daily, but obviously the provisional entry would be just when the open of the zones. And for now, still in a downtrend, it's like, is it going to give the test there? The risk with these is that maybe they're not going to give these tests. As you can see here, it just ran straight up from here, consolidated before then falling. So this could just run straight up into there, but coming off weekly supply, I just don't want to be more aggressive than that. Okay. Okay, so that's just sort of messy. Yeah, so this one I was looking for the trend line break. So I got a trend line break and retest, I know, on that. So let me just have a look at the other time frames. So it's now made a 3-day supply and has appeared to have rejected it already. Got a 2-day in there, which is not correct. That's a daily. So yeah, so I got then we had a trend line break. Then I got a retest on I think it was a 12-hour, 8-hour supply in here. Um, it could have come higher in the zone, but it didn't. You know, it has left a bit of a gap here, but it's obviously now starting to fall. If it did make a 3-day and reject it, and now is made a new daily and rejected it and may make a new daily. So again, but it's a bit slow here. Like I would rather see a bigger drop, and it's potentially flipped. Actually, to keep that out of there for the moment, it's potentially flipped to 12-hour demand in there. So again, this is a bit of a tight one. You would like, again, look for a short in here if you want on this 12-hour supply there, and with the daily inside it. But you would really want to be looking for a swing failure. It needs to close back below this sort of 3.94 level pretty quickly as a swing failure. Otherwise, this is, it could just be a sideways consolidation because now, while we've had the trend line break to the downside, this may end up as a consolidation pattern or accumulation pattern with a possible trend line break to the upside. So I really would have wanted this to fall off quicker on that trend line. It was a bit of a risk because the stops were tight here and the fact the wick already went to nearly the bottom. But that's what I was looking for anyway for the potential for the bigger drop down there. So this short now is possibly a little bit more tenuous than it was, if it had hit many candles ago. But yeah, it's up to you. Just keep an eye on that, and potentially keep an eye on that for if it's a trend line break. If it then flips some demand, then maybe you want to look for a long on this to go up there. Loom was one of the outperforming pumper ones, and Loom was a difficult one. What happened here? Oh no, it was a lower yearly. So this did have a yearly demand above, in fact, all the way up here from last year, but it came all the way back through, all the way back down to this yearly demand at the bottom. It's now got a 3-month supply. So all these ones with history, like quite often have this 3-month supply in above. It's got a 2-month in there as well. So it has come up and taken out up into that 2-month level. So I think I was saying like earlier this year, I was saying a little bit wary of these 2-month levels because they're not like they're a couple of candles, so they're not clean. Oh, sorry. In fact, this one hasn't come. This one hasn't tested that 2-month yet. But I said I would set the alerts anyway. Despite the fact they're A not clean and B big zones. And what I am actually finding is that they are rejecting. Wow. Sorry, threw me off there. Somebody jumped in the pool outside my room. Um, yeah, so I'm finding that these 2-month, 3-month supplies are quite frequently rejecting at the level, even though there are other zones inside higher. So um, I'm kind of leaving those alone. So this we had a rejection of the weekly supply in there, yeah, weekly supply came back down. Hasn't hit this and has gone through yet. So then I had an entry for a possible aggressive short here on 5-day supply, but obviously it's taken a wick all the way through that, but now has come back down hard off that level, off that 2-week level inside. So yeah, I've got the so I had an alert set a bit higher for 3-month supply. It hasn't quite gone all the way up there yet, so I don't really know on this. It's worth looking for, it has made higher lows. It's worth looking for a long if it comes back down to this daily demand. It may even be worth looking for a long now. So it's starting to perk up here a bit on the sort of previous 5-day level, or 4-day sort of flipped demand in there. So it could find support on this. So up to you if you want to look for a long on this. Overarchingly it is in the yearly demand here, so actually it's not a bad trade on this. I just my concern with this would be more that this zone is very, very big. So if you're trading this is a 4-day demand. If you're trading this as a 4-day demand, really your stop needs to be all the way down here. So this would be a much tighter entry if it does come down deeper in the zone. But it's up to you. This is obviously something quite volatile, and I prefer not to trade the too volatile ones. Loose. I think I might make this the last one and then do a second video later today with the remainder of the list. because I feel like I need a bit of a break, and I'm about to go to a class at the gym in an hour. Um, so Loose has just been another volatile, messy one. So short entry or 5 day supply up there. Nice retest for a short off the 3 day. This long entry, like it ran through and took out all the stops down to there. So now it's just like, which way is this thing going to go? Situation uncertain for me. At the moment, I've got an alert set up here for 4 day supply, and there's also a monthly in there. But that's obviously a very messy, very nasty drop that I had on that. And again, I don't know why. And it did, in fact, have, interestingly, okay, so maybe I'm more biased to the long side on this. It does, in fact, have 2 week demand in there. Um, so I'll draw that to the bottom wick. So it did wick all the way deep down inside that. Arguably, it took out the 2 week demand, but um, given its closing, or potentially going to close back above, and this is weekly. So yeah, I just want to see. We'll have to see what the close is going to do on this actually as well. So this might make a monthly. Actually, it's gone through a monthly supply. So yeah, very much I want to see the close on this. So okay, let me just hide. So you can see here it made a monthly supply, a week one, like it closed this red candle, closed below that green one. But then it's pushed straight back up through it. So if it closes above, it's going to flip that monthly to demand. If it closes back below, then potentially it's just a spring failure of the monthly supply. So we need another week to find out what this is actually going to do. Is it going to flip this monthly to demand in there? Given it's now got the 2 week demand, it's possible it does. Certainly if it makes a monthly demand, then it's potentially worth watching for long re-entries. Um, but I want to give this a little bit more time. It's up to you if you want to get an early entry on this daily, or wait for the monthly to potentially confirm down here at 950. And then we'll see how they get the reaction up there on monthly supply. Right, anyway, okay, that's an hour and 15 minutes. So yeah, I'm going to take a break, and I will upload this, and then I can come back later and look at some more hawks this afternoon and the rest of this list. So I'll do, yeah, major, manor, etc., all the way down to Zig this afternoon, this evening. If you have any requests, please put them in the chat. And yeah, please follow me, like, and subscribe if you like my content. And I hope you have a great afternoon.